Well, a lot of events that happened over the weekend, but let's start off as usual in South Africa. Before going over the weekend's events, today the budget speech was postponed after the Democratic Alliance complained about the 2% hike in VAT prices. And that is something I think they were doing on behalf of all South Africans. Now, this was, of course, the first time in democratic South African history where the budget speech was postponed. But it's also the first time where we've had a GNU, so I think that says something. Moving on to the weekend's news, where thousands of Afrikaners marched to the US Embassy in Pretoria to thank Donald Trump for his support. A delusional crowd that chanted the old anthem and waved the old flag, which in South Africa is illegal, and they should face the consequences for their actions. But this group of about 3,000 people do not represent the views and beliefs of the 4.5 million white South African population. Many Afrikaner community leaders, religious leaders, as well as Afrikaners in general, have stated that they would prefer that South African problems are handled by South Africans, without any external interference. The decisions from Donald Trump should have all South Africans worried, though. America has no interest in talking. Wherever America goes, chaos and destruction follow. Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, Somalia, Syria. I could go on. Our president, Uncle Cyril, has said on multiple occasions that South Africa will not be bullied, so in response he sent out delegations for talks. But America only cares about action. If the United States really wanted to talk it out, they would have. Instead, they just slapped sanctions on us. I seriously do hope that Uncle Cyril is able to not bend a knee to Donald Trump like so many other countries already have. We need a strong leader right now, one that is able to recognize the true intentions of America, which is something that Nelson Mandela was able to do.
If there is a country that has committed unspeakable atrocities in the world, it is the United States of America. They don't care. They don't care for human beings. 57 years ago, when Japan was retreating on all fronts, they decided to drop the atom bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Killed a lot of innocent people who are still suffering from the effects of those bombs. Those bombs were not aimed against the Japanese. They were aimed against the Soviet Union to say, look, this is the power that we have. If you dare oppose what we do, this is what is going to happen to you. Because they are so arrogant, they decided to kill innocent people in Japan. Who are they now to pretend that they are the policemen of the world?
There was chaos in Europe during the Munich Security Conference. American Vice President J.D. Vance tore into European leaders for their crackdown on free speech. The whole clip is just under 2 minutes long, but I'll just play the best parts for you.
Unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. This last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizen suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
He's right. Free speech is practically non-existent in Europe, and it didn't exactly help that German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius immediately slammed Vance's speech as unacceptable, as he called it.
This is why I cannot just ignore what we heard before. I cannot not comment on the speech we heard by the US Vice President. We fight for your right to be against us. That is the motto, one of the mottos of the Bundeswehr, and it stands for our democracy. This democracy that was just called into question by the US Vice President, and not just the German democracy, but Europe as a whole. He spoke of the annulment of democracy, and if I understood him correctly, he compares the condition of Europe with the condition that prevails in some authoritarian regimes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not acceptable.
But now on to more important news. The peace talks in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, between Russia and the United States. The Europeans were furious that they weren't involved, but why should they be? The EU is one of the main obstacles to securing a peace in Ukraine, the other main obstacle being Volodymyr Zelensky. Both Russian and American delegations wrapped up negotiations on Tuesday, with both parties agreeing to take each other's interests into account. European leaders had their own little peace summit, but they won't be getting an invitation to the big boys' table. Both meetings also excluded the participation of Ukrainians, which I find quite funny because last year, June, the West held a peace summit in Switzerland that excluded the participation of Russia. And now the tables have turned. Russia is in and Ukraine is out. And look how quickly things are progressing without Ukraine. It's because they never wanted a proper peace. Ending off now in Gaza. Over the weekend, the sixth exchange of prisoners between Israel and Hamas took place, and the deal went forward as planned with the release of 3 Israeli prisoners for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners in return. We have seen multiple times now the difference in treatment of prisoners held in Israeli captivity compared to those held by Hamas. Israelis released are in good health, they seem to be well fed, and some of them have even thanked members of Hamas for their protection. But it is the complete opposite for Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli captivity. They are always returned thin and frail, in bad health, and clearly suffering from physical and psychological torture. The West is always calling Israel the only democracy and the most civilized nation in the Middle East, but it is Nelson Mandela that once said, and I quote, "No one truly knows a nation until one has seen inside its jails. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones." End quote. And the treatment of Palestinian prisoners held by Israel has been cruel and inhumane. And the next time Netanyahu says that this is a fight between good and evil, know that he is right. But it is Israel that is on the side of evil and not Hamas. Thank you, everybody. This has been Truth Uncapped. Until Friday, signing off.